if we are going to have success in their recovery, it will come as a result of their experiences together and the relationship that they make with each other. Another thing that, we talk about here is, how do we find joy? We have guys that haven't experienced any true joy in years, decades sometimes, right? They don't know what it's like to find joy. They're scared of it. They're holding on to the substance because that's the only thing that provides that sense of release and comfort. And they don't know what life looks like on the other side of that.
Good afternoon. My name is Graham Durgee, and I'm the founder and CEO of New Waters Recovery in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to our weekly podcast, Finding New Waters. Our goal in creating Finding New Waters is to provide a resource for families to help navigate the complexities of supporting a loved one struggling with substance use or mental health. When we find ourselves in crisis due to one of these issues, most people have no idea where to turn. We hope to shed some light onto what is often the darkest hour for many families.
How you doing, everybody? Thank you for joining us for another episode of Finding New Waters. My name is Justin Mclendon, Executive Director here at New Waters Recovery. I'm joined by Ryan Jarrel, our Continuing Care Coordinator, and then our guest today is no other than KC Gooding, who is the Chief Marketing Officer with Jaywalker Lodge. And Jaywalker is out in it's Colorado?
Yeah, Carbondale, Colorado.
There we go. So KC, I always like to start this out, if you're okay with it, and maybe just, I'm curious as to always, what brought people into the field, right? So maybe just, what got you interested in working in this field, and where has that led you, I guess?
Well, that's a funny story with me. And I think it starts with, a lot of guys that do the work and professionals that do this work start with their own personal story of recovery. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I've been sober since 11/29/2012. At which time my family provided an opportunity for me to join them on this thing we know as recovery. I was 35 years old, not doing much in life, couldn't rub two nickels together. I had managed to make it that far in my life, but in 2012 I was supported with the opportunity to enter treatment. I stayed in Southern California, where I went to treatment for so a good amount of time. I ended up staying there a decade, but initially it was go through treatment, create a recovery community, get a sponsor, work the steps, and launch into recovery. And as far as being a professional in the behavioral healthcare space, to be completely honest with you guys, I did not really want to work in this field. Reason being is when I first went to treatment, I saw people that were working in tech positions, and I had a who's now my wife, and
okay,
I wasn't going to be a sober living manager or a behavioral health care tech. And I saw a lot of people that worked in, in the therapeutic components, and I wasn't going to go back to school and become a therapist. Additionally, I didn't see a lot of people that were staying sober that were working in the field. A lot of those techs would get involved in the treatment business relatively early in their recovery, and we'd see them back in the meetings taking newcomer chips. And so for me, it was a little bit scary. And there was obviously, I was getting sober in a very treatment saturated area in Southern California. So a lot of treatment around me, but not something necessarily that I was very vastly interested in until I had about 2 years of recovery. And I found out that there were people that do admissions and marketing and business development that kind of coincided with a lot of the personal skills that I had. And a friend of mine was working at a treatment program who invited me to speak with his boss, and one thing led to another, and here I am 10 years later.
That's great, man. That's great.
I can really empathize with that. I think Justin and I, we were on the other side of the country in South Florida, and I think it's a very similar kind of environment where there's a lot of treatment and not a lot of recovery, and it's an unfortunate thing to see kind of unfold around you. It can definitely leave a sour taste in your mouth regarding the industry.
That's very
For
true.
sure, for sure. I mean, a lot of good treatment, a lot of very average treatment, and some poor treatment, right? And so you have a melting pot of
Hmm.
individuals that are coming from every different area. I mean, in that community, very rarely did I find somebody that was like a native Californian and lived there their whole life and was engaged in the recovery community there, although there were a few. My best friends were from New York City and Idaho and different places like that. And that's what ended up becoming my recovery community that was about me there eventually.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And when did you, or how long have you been with Jaywalker?
So I've been with Jaywalker for the last year and a half.
Okay.
I started my behavioral health care career in 2014 in Southern California. I worked for an outpatient program called 449. I did that for about 2 years. I worked for 5 years at a program called New Method Wellness in San Juan Capistrano. And then the year prior to me coming here to Jaywalker, I worked on the national business development team for Burning Tree programs. So in May of 2022, my wife and I packed up a U-Haul in Dana Point, California, and drove right here to Aspen. And we live here close to the program at Jaywalker in Carbondale, Colorado now.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So we know of Jaywalker, but anybody who's listening or watching the podcast episode, I'd love for you to have an opportunity to just talk a little bit about, what is Jaywalker services, kind of population, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you might even ask, like, golly, you're living in Dana Point, California. You've created a recovery community there. You've got 10 sponsees, and you're doing this
Right.
recovery thing, and you've, planted your flag in Southern California. What would be so riveting that you would be willing to pack up your entire life, everything you know, on an opportunity to go to some small mountain town of 7,000 people located in the western slope of Colorado? Right. And, that's exactly what it was for me, though. I think everything that has transpired in my recovery and my journey as a behavioral health care professional prepared me to take on the challenge that was awaiting for me here in Carbondale. Reason really simply is, through all those years of being a young professional in this field, I was mentored by some of the best and most wonderful people in our field. Bob Ferguson, who's the owner of Jaywalker Lodge, being one. Gary Fisher, the executive director of Circle Lodge, being another one. And, Doug Lyons, owner and principal founder of Clear Consulting, were three guys that I always really looked up to. It was awesome. Last weekend we were in Los Angeles. All four of us were together, and I got to take a picture. And I think that I hope that other people that are in our field value the importance of having strong mentorship. When I got sober, I didn't do it by myself. I had a sponsor. I had a community of people that supported me. And being in the profession we're in, it's so important to keep yourself healthy and have other people that you can rely on to support you through this journey. So that kind of position started with my relationship with Bobby, who is the owner here. And there was an opportunity that the chief marketing officer here, who had been employed here for about 11 years, was leaving to start his own organization. And, I called Bobby very organically. I wanted to check in with him on see how things were here. And we started just having a conversation on what that might look like. And, to be fair and transparent, my wife wasn't overly excited about leaving this little village by the sea that we had, this surf town that we were so comfortable in. But with, enough, leverage and support from the leadership team and the community here at Jaywalker, we came out and were convinced rather quickly. What we found here was something entirely different than what we had experienced in California. We found very authentic people that were committed to this purpose that they have here at Jaywalker. Very, very talented individuals working at a program this wasn't a startup. This was a proven commodity that has an excellent track record for success rates and a legacy of excellence over a long-term time in our field. So coming in, I had to get up to speed in regards of, what are the things that make Jaywalker so special or so important. So, here at Jaywalker, a little bit about who we typically support, right? A lot of our guys, they've been to a couple 30-day treatment episodes. They're really good at recovery, or really good at treatment and really bad at recovery. Somehow, some way, they have, went into, high containment environment programs and done very successful. They're everybody's favorite client. They're the guy that Ryan's stoked to get to the next spot because they just are sure that he's going to be successful. And then he's the same guy that comes back a month later, right? And you're like, what happened? Mm-hmm. And so overwhelmingly, almost all of the guys that come to Jaywalker are they have an addiction professional such as your guys' selves, such as many people that we work with throughout the nation, that is profoundly committed to the well-being of not only the individual that they're supporting with the recommendation of Jaywalker, but the family that supports them. I think what's really great about this thing is it's a 7,000 person town. It's has almost a 20-year track record or history, and we have about 400 men that live in the Roaring Fork Valley that are graduates of our program, that are participating in our alumni program and are active part of what we do here. And so that is really like the secret sauce, is like, this thing's been built here. It's a destination. It's a sticky zip code. It provides a lifestyle that young men in recovery can come out and build a life in recovery with a recovery community, with brothers, with the support of a really world-class staff. They can find their joy. They can find their purpose. They can find their meaning. The way that we do it is over 5 different levels of care that span across an entire year's continuum. So most of our guys are coming out. There's some level of stability. They've been through detox. They go through a resident Jaywalker with the support of the program or individuals and professionals that are supporting them, and most importantly, the support of their family that is walking through this journey with them. They started our landing program where they have an opportunity to kind of be integrated into our environment. We have a triple board certified psychiatrist, man in long-term recovery, and medical director named Craig Bichon, also known as a unicorn. Not too many psychiatrists meet those same standards as him, but he's great. He does psychiatric evaluations for the individuals entering the program. We have Gail Matheson, who is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. She has a son who went through our program about 8 years ago. So not only is she extremely qualified, but she understands intimately as a parent what it's like to have your son here. And then Stephen Bate is our chief clinical officer, and he oversees our entire clinical team across all programs. He manages a really multidisciplinary clinical team utilizing multiple different clinical modalities to support our individuals through the treatment process. In the landing, they stay there for 7 to 28 days, depending on their level of stability. And then they transition into our primary lodge program, which is kind of the staple program, what everybody thinks of a Jaywalker. If you get on our website, you'll see a really cool building in the middle of Carbondale, Colorado. It's got a really cool mural on it. It's an iconic building. Professionals that come out and see us always want their picture taken in front of it. And that's where kind of you have the opportunity to change, right? And so what we've created as a result of being in where we're at, we're not in a seclusion from life. We're not using containment as an agency for change here. We're in the midst of a little mountain town on Main Street. And so what we have there is an open community model of care. So our guys are doing an equal amount of clinical services, group individual therapies, and an equal amount of arts and cultural or outdoor recreation. As a result of our proximity, and, in one look at our website, you'll see these amazing experiences that our men get to engage in on a daily basis. And I can tell you, after being here for over a year and a half, I'm simply just amazed every single day of what kind of experience these men get here at Jaywalker Lodge. I would say, unlike a lot of other programs, we've talked a little bit about the psychiatric components. We've talked about, the clinical professionals that are supporting them. Here at Jaywalker Lodge, we have a wellness director and an activities and expedition team that's employed full time to support our men on a daily schedule. They typically have 3 to 4 different activities that they can enroll: fishing, golfing, hiking, snowboarding, skiing, arts museums, acting, theme, whatever it might be. We want to support our men in creating a life of joy, abundance, and meaning. Everything that's done, everything that's done here is really in line with what we believe in. We believe that addiction treatment should not be a consequence of your past, rather a promise of your future, of a life in active addiction. They're afraid of what it looks like on the other side of it. And so what we need to do is show them how to live a life of joy, how to experience that in community with other people, because if we can't show the guys how to have fun, they'll never know what the other side looks like.
Absolutely. I mean, that's pretty amazing, man. I mean, I think just some of the things that you said, I mean, snowboarding, hiking, getting to engage in like arts and culture. I mean, that sounds amazing, because to your point, I think that's a lot about what recovery has to be about, right? Is learning to live life, right? And to, kind of break the chains of bondage, as I like to think about it, and learn how to live a life that's, joyous and free, right?
Absolutely. And I think the thing we talk about a lot is, how do we equate a treatment episode into a recovery experience? And that's what we specialize in here. It's like, yes, many of us, we go into treatment experiences, we go into treatment episodes, those last for a duration. But the missing component is, how do we create recovery out of that treatment episode? So not utilizing a lot of policing, not utilizing a lot of levels of containment, offering high levels of individual agency and enrollment is how we're able to have an effective difference in the men we support.
As someone who has worked in a similar setting, I think that's something that is so relieving to the client, but sometimes so terrifying to the family. So I was wondering, kind of what kind of family programming do you guys provide, especially since you're dealing with young men over such a long period of time?
Yeah, the family component is, we talk about agents of change. I think there's a couple things that we all believe as professionals that provide better results. I mean, you guys at New Waters have a great clinical staff, and they're a part of that. And, us at Jaywalker are the same. And I think we all know that the longer you can keep an individual committed to quality services, the higher level of success that we're going to find, right? Mm-hmm. That's pretty proven. For us, the overwhelming largest component to create change is the involvement of the family system throughout the treatment process and recovery. So we know what it's going to look like for the individual when it's here. We've got a program that supports that man. It's an individualized program within a community setting. But we need to talk with families about how they participate in that journey. So about 70% of our guys that come here are referred from a different professional. That means an interventionist. It could be a program like New Waters. But 100% of the families that we support, we want engaged in some form of work on their own, which means we're going to recommend that they engage in the support of an addiction professional, LCSW, LMFT, a family case management organization that is doing their part to educate and support the family throughout the process of recovery, getting them on consent here so our team can create a collaborative approach with the family consultant, ensuring that everybody's taking measures towards their own personal recovery. Now at Jaywalker, we're going to do a little bit more in the family system work than most programs, because we're a long-term program. And so what that looks like typically is, pre-admissions, we're doing a lot of background work, asking the families for bios and timelines associated with their perspective of their loved one, so that our clinical team is supported with accurate information that they can understand the challenges within the system, so that we can recommend the appropriate professional to work with the family. We're also going to do a lot of family workshops. So each week, our family therapist, Lenny Bullier, is doing Zoom workshops with families, providing providing psychoeducation and additional support from here at Jaywalker. There's weekly touches with the family from our clinical team, providing updates on their loved ones. And those aren't just updates regarding their loved ones. Those are actually check-ins to ask the family how they're doing with the work. We send out family contracts with families prior to admission. Do you agree that you're going to participate in your loved one's treatment episode? We want you to sign this information and send it back to us. There needs to be a good amount of accountability on behalf of the family members, because if we identify this as a family systems disease, it does require components of work for all members of the family, not just the guy that's in care at Jaywalker. On top of that, we have family weekends that come up, and we invite all families to come. Last family group that we had 12 families. 90% of our guys are from outside of the general Colorado area. They're coming from, North Carolina. They're coming from Florida, New York, California, Texas. And the families are coming here to have that experience. They get that experience with their loved one. They get that experience with other families. And it's a really powerful thing to see their loved one in a new way when they come here to meet them. And then more importantly, or equally of importance, recently we've launched alumni family support groups. And those are available via Zoom to all of our alumni families, whether you were here 19 years ago or you have a loved one enrolled in care now. And so what we do is we operate that as a Zoom group bi-monthly. And then we ask, much like you guys are doing here, we ask other professional organizations to come in group facilitate a different experience or perspective. So we believe that this thing works the best when we have the whole family engaged in the process, doing the work, supporting their loved one, and joining each other on the road to recovery.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. That kind of brings up a question. I'm always interested because we deal with the same thing, right? And we completely agree with that statement in that, I think a lot of times you see families, and I think a lot of it's just a lack of understanding, a lack of experience with this, and also just being in a place of just operating out of fear and just really not knowing what to do, and just only being able to rely on what they feel like is going to work. So I think, to your point, Casey, I think getting the family on board with the process and helping them understand, what their role can kind of start to look like is crucially important in the treatment process and this, overall success, I think, of the client. But the question that comes up for me is, I'm just curious, how do you deal with that? Or what do you think would be something that you would say to that family member on that early end of recovery where they're operating out of fear, they don't know what to do? What comes up for you? What would be something that you'd want to communicate to them?
Well, the best story is my own personal story. I think that's where I get to draw most of the interest, right? Is that, my family did what I'm hopeful that you're willing to do, right? To a good result. This is what it looked like. My family made changes that promoted my change. A lot of times our families are engaged, they're, operating out of fear, as one would say. They're constantly responding to the crisis that their loved one's creating in their lives, right? Most of our men are completely dependent on their families, and the family system is almost turned inverted. What we need to do is help them, empower them to make decisions that are based on the clinical best interest of the family and their loved one. And a lot of times there's profound uncomfortability in doing that because we've been used to a system that has been dysfunctional, right? So we're trying to flip the script. And so the best thing that I can do is kind of tell the story. I'm absolutely convinced had they not stepped in, I would have been the first one to pass. I was much worse than all my friends that are now deceased. And I may have been the only one who had the opportunity to find recovery as a result of my family's unconditional love and commitment to me as their son. So, we utilize a lot of different components to encourage them. We try and leverage in any way. We try and identify, what leverage is or implement boundaries. But more importantly, we're just trying to get them to make a call with enrolling in someone who can be there to support them. What we don't want to have happen is them to constantly be in a position where they are not making the best decisions in support of their loved one and then holding themselves hostage as a result of poor outcomes based on those decisions.
Absolutely.
I think so many times what it is, and it seems so basic, right? But it's you have to move away from the framework that what we're dealing with is an individual's moral failing, and what we're dealing with is a disease and a systemic issue. And if you can make that perception shift, which is so difficult but so basic, I've seen amazing kind of outcomes follow. But until that happens, it's just never going to happen, But people think it's the same thing as a teenager leaving their shoes in the living room every day, And we're dealing with a different issue, something so profound. And I really applaud you guys for really taking the time to do that. KC, as someone who was kind of an outsider from this thing, like I would see, experiential stuff, and honestly, I would kind of raise my eyebrow. Like I got sober and I can't snowboard. You know what I mean? So like, what is the value of that? And I think working in this industry, I got to see this kind of experiential element and really the change it could make in young men's lives. I was hoping you could talk about what is the role that experiential therapy plays in Jaywalker and how important you think that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we talk about this disease. I mean, and that's a great segue into what this is. What does that disease necessarily look like, right? We see a lot of isolation, separation from family systems, separation from peers, a lot of reclusivity, those kind of things. That's what progressive and fatal illness looks like typically. And so, what we have here at Jaywalker in our primary program, there's typically about 20 men, and we're really focused on them creating authentic peer-driven relationships with each other. So how does that happen, right? And so when I've got 10 minutes to sit with Justin and we're on a chairlift and we are, we got nothing else to do except for just to talk each other and check in, you know what I mean? Like, how can you and I create an authentic relationship with each other? Well, I've got a captive audience for 10 minutes, 20 times a day, and it's going to be Justin, it's going to be me, it's going to be me, it's going to be Ryan, it's going to be all the guys that I'm engaged in this thing with. So we're really about trying to create a community of individuals. We understand that at a certain point, if this thing is going to work, it'll be based on the relationships that I make with Justin and Ryan in my time at Jaywalker that create that recovery community about me. Because even with a long-term program like Jaywalker, treatment doesn't last forever. In fact, our primary program is 90 days, and then they step down into a transitional program, and they continue to work on developing those relationships with their peers. And then they step into independent living and outpatient services, and they do that, and they can stay all the way up to a year. But we're in the belief that recovery happens outside of treatment. And that's what's going to happen. Certainly, clinically, psychiatrically, we can process, we can do therapy that will support their deeper issues that are taking place. But if we are going to have success in their recovery, it will come as a result of their experiences together and the relationship that they make with each other. Another thing that, we talk about here is how do we find joy? We have guys that haven't experienced any true joy in years, decades sometimes, right? They don't know what it's like to find joy. They're scared of it. They're holding on to the substance because that's the only thing that provides that sense of release and comfort. And they don't know what life looks like on the other side of that. So what are some things that you loved to do when you were a kid? Well, I really like to go skiing with my family. I like to go to Dairy Queen and get a nice ice cream cone dipped and sprinkled with chocolate, and hey, let's go do that at Jaywalker, right? Let's take you down the street. Let's walk down the street in freedom, not in seclusion, not in high security. Enroll you in the process of doing this. Show you something different. Engage with a community of individuals that have a lot of relative life experience. A lot of our guys are, the really successful mom or dad. They've got brothers and sisters who are valedictorians and have launched into life and been successful. And our guy is sitting there in a life of guilt and shame and reclusivity and isolation. We need to fight that with something that can overcome that. The power of the community in the experience that they have together is what we're betting on for them to overcome where they've been.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that. And it's true. I mean, so similar, I have some experience in my past. Early in my career, I worked in not the same, but, similar kind of setup. And it's true. I think it's true across all age spans, demographics. I mean, when we're talking about somebody who is struggling with the disease of addiction or other, forms of these types of afflictions, right? I think it's very true. I think it is very much a disease of isolation and bondage and being deprived of feeling, hope and peace and I couldn't agree with you more, Casey. I think the formulation of those relationships and being able to slowly dip our toes back into, what it feels like to not have to live that way, right? But to experience a little taste of joy here and there. I mean, long term, I think that is for me, in my opinion, I think that is the ingredient that is so crucial for success. Just learning how to form those relationships, how to engage with other people, how to pursue and understand the things that are going to bring us happiness in our life.
Casey, I'm curious. You get all this freedom. How do you guys deal with the potential returns to use? And I think that's sometimes a byproduct and a very real reality when you're dealing with a more open treatment situation.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that we engage with like almost every time we have professionals come and visit our community. I will say it happens a lot less than one might think, especially considering that we're treating really what would be known as a chronic relapse patient a lot of times. We have plenty of guys that are in their first treatment experience. We have guys that have been 5 to 10, those kinds of things, suffer from some pretty heavy co-occurring mental health diagnoses. That's why we have the psychiatric components that we have and in therapeutic modalities that we employ. It has to do with, another bet that we're placing. This is a high risk, high reward situation that we have at Jaywalker that makes it very, very unique. Right next to our lodge program is a pizza parlor and bar. Down the street from our treatment program, literally 500 yards is a marijuana dispensary. 200 yards the other way is a liquor store. Right. So our men are literally getting up in the morning. They're going out into the community. They're walking to the yoga studio and walking right past a liquor store. A lot of them that are, alcohol is their primary drug of choice. We're leveraging the autonomy. We're leveraging the relationships they have, that their relationships with their peers could be so important and something that they've missed and yearned for so long, that the obsession to use and go to the liquor store is superseded by their need to be a part of something. That's, one of the main components. But we also have a full continuum of care here with many different levels of, security or, stabilization, those kind of things. And a lot of times what we see is, specifically in that patient that's been to 5 to 10 treatment programs, is they go to residential treatment. They go to PHP, IOP, and sober living. They do that for like a month. They relapse and they start all the way over. They go to a new program. They start that process. They do it over. They go to another program. They start all the way over. And so what happens is our men become institutionalized. Right. And they're not able to experience these things, and everything's kind of taken care of for them. And, they find themselves in high containment treatment over and over again. And so luckily here, we do have, the landing program where there's a high level of supervision that's provided. And if there's ever any setbacks, whether an individual's in the lodge program, in the solutions program, in our sober living and outpatient program, we can bring them in, support them, get our hands around them, work with their family, work with the family therapist, work with our team, identify an appropriate solution to support them moving forward, imply higher levels of accountability and responsibility, add different psychiatric pieces, add different therapeutic pieces, add different case management aspects, coaching, companioning, all sorts of different things that we can support them with for the interim and keep them most of the time right on track where they were. It's not always required at a certain point, if there's a relapse, if there's remorse, to have an individual start all the way back over. It might be more beneficial to support them with where they're at, giving additional aspects and support, right? So we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. Here at Jaywalker, like if you guys were to come, or you could look at our buildings online, all those buildings are no more than 100 yards apart. We have 5 different buildings that span across an entire year's continuum. We have about 40 men that are typically engaged in services throughout that entire year. Again, there's about 400 that live in the Roaring Fork Valley. So what we have is this recovery ecosystem that takes place on Main Street, and it's all around you. Like, it takes me an hour to go get a gallon of milk at the grocery store because I'm going to run into a jaywalker. I'm going to have a conversation with them. I'm going to check in, see how things are going. My wife's going to call and say, hey, you said you were going to the store for a gallon of milk. And I said, yeah, I am, but I ran into JJ, I ran into Josh. And that's just how it goes. And we want that for our men. We want them to be exposed to the success. You know, one of the really cool things that we do, like, we've talked about what it looks like for the clients. We know what it looks like for the families, but what does it look like for the alumni? So everything that we do for the clients, we do for the alumni. So on Wednesday night, our chef cooks a big dinner and 100 guys come in for a meeting. It's a bustling place, and guys have 10 years of recovery, and they have 2 months of recovery, and they have all these things. But if you're a brand new guy coming from New Waters to Jaywalker, in the first week, you're going to the alumni meeting and you're meeting guys that have had success in recovery, guys that are from Chicago, where you're from, that have a family that's, you know, a doctor and lawyer mom, and the relativity is astounding, right? And, you know, we do alumni expeditions. We do, you know, monthly activities for the guys. There's always something that Dylan, our alumni coordinator, is doing for the guys here. It's really something special to be part of.
That's great, man. That's amazing. And I'm assuming, I know it sounds like you have a lot of guys that come out and they kind of, you know, they get engaged and they create a community around them, and it sounds like they just kind of stay in the local community. What about those clients that are coming in and engaging, but then at some point maybe kind of leaving the area and going back to wherever home may be for them?
Yeah, we have about an equal percentage of that. I would say about half of the guys that come here are recommended to come here with the expectation from that referent, from their family, to be a part of this thing in the greater whole here in Carbondale. You know, come out, plant roots, and stay for a while, stay in this sticky zip code. About 50% of the guys that come out, they are coming out for a 90-day experience, doing our primary program, doing the lodge after stabilization. And we're creating a specific treatment plan that supports them with reintegration into their local community. And there's a lot of different parts that may be involved in that, just depending on what their clinical progress is. They know that they always have a home back here with us should they ever need to return. We encourage them to participate in a lot of the alumni activities, come on some of the expeditions with us, engage in Zoom session meetings that are held for the alumni. But our position, certainly my position, is supporting the individual, the referent family, in identifying appropriate resources, a lot in the same way that Ryan's doing for you guys, right? Like, how can we put together an appropriate plan of action for Josh that needs to go back to Des Moines, Iowa? The things that he's done here and the recovery experience that he has been provided will translate into something that he can implement in his life on a daily basis in Des Moines. You know, is there a case management component? Is there, a private practice therapy? Is there psychiatry? Is there an IOP? Where are we at in supporting him with this transitional plan? So there's typically a lot of work that goes into that to ensure that we're setting our men up to find success in their local communities.
That's great. And that can be a heavy lift. I mean, we know that. Ryan knows that very well, right? But it's important though, right? I mean, that's the thing is I think, primary treatment is important. And I think if in the cases where people have an opportunity to engage in a treatment such as Jaywalker, I think can be much more conducive, right? I mean, just again, as we talked about, being able to teach them, how to live a little bit. But yeah, I mean, regardless of whether they're staying or whether they're going back, I think, the continuation of, engaging in relationships and staying connected to clinical care and things like that are just so crucially important. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot of times, I've worked at other treatment programs throughout my career, and certainly worked at a couple longer term treatment programs over the last 3 years. I think we're always kind of looking at a year of recovery as kind of like the golden standard, and I know that you guys are probably entering people, in bad condition, and in the hopes that we can create a plan that will support this young man, this young woman, whatever it may be, in getting a year of recovery. Like, what are the things that what are the pieces that we can add that will equate to that? And we know that once a person can get a year of recovery, that's a year of abstinence at the very least, right?
Right.
They have had experiences. If they're, in a 12-step community, they've done some step work. They've engaged in a recovery community. They've done some service. They know what recovery looks like. Over a year, they have experienced joy in certain ways again. They have worked on their personal relationships. They probably have a new group of friends. And so with those components, at the very least, there's a much higher success rate in getting a person into longer term recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see here. So I think we're coming kind of close to our end of our time. Casey, I really appreciate you taking some time to hang out with us and chat today. And I really, really enjoyed getting to learn more about Jaywalker and about yourself. I'd love to, just kind of selfishly, I'd love to come out and see the place sometime, Would love to do that.
I'll give Graham a call and let him know, we're ready to host you guys, and, we'll get your ski passes ready and put you together for the Jaywalker experience, because we don't have much more time until these guys are going to be on the mountain 2-3 times a week.
That's true.
Skiing with each other. The fall season, while it's my favorite, it is in short order. Our temperatures are declining on a daily basis. So
okay.
I'll be looking forward to some of that season. And I know a lot of our guys will be showing up with snowboards and skis and these types of things over the next month. So you can count on that. I'll make the call for you.
That's awesome.
I make funeral arrangements for me as well, because I only go down a mountain one way, and it's on my back, I found. So, but thank you.
That's funny. So, Casey, I know I've kind of inserted one of these questions already, but I always like to kind of wrap these things up with, you being someone in personal recovery and obviously having a lot of experience with the field and helping guide individuals in their own process. What would be like a takeaway or something for, let's say if there was a family member or even a potential, a person that's kind of struggling with their own disease right now that's watching or listening to this episode, what would be like a nugget that you would want them to take away from this?
Yeah, just
not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah, I think just knowing that there's help, right? Certainly we work at 2 of the finer organizations in the nation, very different types of treatment programs. There's, a wide variety of services that are available. I'm a big component of, identifying a professional that can walk you through this treatment process, right? And identify the best options that support you and your family's needs. Ensure that, you're doing your diligence in identifying what one of those professionals offers, what their level of expertise is, how they can help you through that. Because one thing that, I know is that, our families are experts at parenting their child because that's what their experience is.
Right.
But they're not necessarily experts at parenting an addicted child or a child with heavy mental health disorders or these kind of things. And there's not necessarily a book that's going to be out there that's going to be riveting, that's going to turn you into an addiction professional.
Right.
I always equate this experience of, I'm an addiction professional. My wife is in finance. We had a big pipe bust in our house the other day. I didn't run home, put on my gloves, grab wrenches, and start fixing that thing. I called a professional to help me get that done. And
there you go.
And if we have a son or a daughter who needs some support, let's get a professional involved that can start paving the way. We need an engineer, we need an architect of the family that can walk us through exactly what we can expect, how we can participate, and what's going to provide the best opportunity for us to find success now. So that's kind of my nugget.
I love it. You are not alone, right? It's so basic. And we just think we have to keep doing this stuff. We have to do it alone. We have to keep it secret within these 4 walls. And I love that you guys seem to be making this general movement and just having people reach out. That's beautiful.
Yeah, we love it. And thank you guys so much for having me today. This has been awesome.
Likewise. Yeah. Thank you so much, Casey. We really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit better. And I guess until next time, right?
Signing off. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.